The past several weeks have been extraordinarily busy at our department, and indeed for many people across the federal family. But it has really illustrated the broad scope of the responsibilities of our department, which is the nation's newest, by the way. We are 8 years old, and third largest. And we were comprised of 22 different agencies that were put under one roof, along with several directorates in the wake of the attack of 9/11. So what I'd like to do today with the time that we have is speak about three issues that I think are of topical concern right now in the news, and then open it up for questions, and feel free to ask me about those topics or any other topic that is on your mind with respect to Homeland, the Homeland, and Homeland Security. It is really hard to believe that it was just 6 days ago that President Obama announced that Osama bin Laden had been killed. This is probably one of the most significant achievements yet in our ongoing efforts against terrorism and our nation's effort to defeat Al-Qaeda. Now, at the department, one of the things that we have taken on is the responsibility for making sure that the nation as a whole, particularly at the law enforcement side, has instant and rapid information about what is happening so that they too can add their efforts to the protection of the communities they serve. In addition, we have a responsibility to intersect with the security leadership at key components of our critical infrastructure, such as, for example, aviation and the aviation sector. So we immediately, with the FBI, moved to issue what's called a Joint Intelligence Bulletin to our partners in state and local law enforcement, discussing some of the potential theoretical implications for the homeland. Put that out around midnight on Sunday. But that was only the beginning of the ongoing efforts, because there really is no doubt that Al-Qaeda or an Al-Qaeda or affiliate or those inspired by its ideology continue to focus their attacks on the West and their thoughts and attacks on the United States. What does that mean? That does not mean that we live in fear or we walk around in a constant state of alarm. What it means is that we just have to remain ever vigilant against these threats and others for those who would seek to attack us and our way of life. We must be vigilant to the threats posed by the related groups, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, Al-Shabaab. And we also must, and this is somewhat new, remain vigilant against homegrown extremists, those who have become radicalized to the point of violence and have become radicalized. Sometimes they're not in physical connection with anyone else, but they are in connection via the internet with the ideology and with the tactics and techniques that can be used, how to build a bomb on the internet. So we haven't, in light of this, one of the questions I've received is, why haven't we raised the alert level for the United States? Well, first of all, we had just the week before eliminated the color code system because, I mean, I may be wearing orange today, but take nothing from it, okay? I mean, that's just the jacket that was in the closet. So our test is whether there are specific and credible threats against the public or the public at large, in which case we will adjust the new advisory system. And we would do that by an announcement from me with concurrent elevation of the risk level, advisory level on the internet, through social media, new media, and through standard media as well. But we have not done that as yet, although we continue to participate in ongoing evaluation of the material that we have received. But we have taken some other actions, and specifically in response to Sunday's events. In addition to the intelligence bulletin that I mentioned earlier, we issued special advisories to fusion centers, which are co-located federal, state, local law enforcement centers that we are and have developed across the country. There are 72 of them. They're designed to be portals of entry for the exchange of intelligence from D.C. to the country and from the country to D.C. So their directors to Homeland Security advisors, those are advisors to the governors of the country, to the major city chiefs and their intelligence commanders, to, as I referenced, private sector critical infrastructure owners and operators, and other law enforcement entities. We are, with the FBI, reviewing all open cases of potential al-Qaeda core, AQAP, and AQIM operatives who may be in the United States. And we're working very closely with the Intelligence Committee on any intel from the ongoing operations that may pertain to the United States, to the homeland. We are strengthening, and this is a process that began months ago, but we're really strengthening the vetting, the checking of applicants for visa, asylum, and other what we call immigration benefit applicants. And we are doing that in cooperation with the intel community. And we have deployed, to be conservative, but I think wisely so, prudently so, deployed additional teams to non-secured areas at selected airports and at transportation. And as you can see from the news of the other day, that was a good thing to do, given some of the initial readout of the intel. But in the meantime, we continue on with business as usual. We ask the public to do that. And we rely on the fact that people recognize that security is a shared responsibility. No one federal department can be responsible for all the security issues of this vast nation of ours. So it is shared. It is shared with governors. It is shared with state and local law enforcement. It is shared with the private sector, and it's shared with individuals. So one of the campaigns we began last year and are spreading widely across the country is the See Something, Say Something campaign. If you see something unusual, suspicious, or the like, make sure that you say something to a person in authority who can deal with it appropriately. So that is a very easy slogan to remember. It was invented by the Metropolitan Transit Authority in New York in the wake of 9/11. They have graciously allowed us to use it, and now we have spread it across the country and have security and security-related matters attendant to that at lots of public sites and public venues. Somebody mentioned last night the Hawks-Bulls game. The NBA works with us, the NFL works with us, Major League Baseball works with us, NCAA throughout March Madness had See Something, Say Something as part of their ongoing messaging. So to the press club today, I say the same thing. You see something, you say something. So that work is ongoing, and that all of that work that I've just described is being constantly done, evaluated, worked on 24/7. It is an unending effort for protection of the people of the United States. Now, in conjunction with that, in our department, not only do we have security-related matters, but we also have FEMA. And you may have noticed here in Georgia, but throughout the Southeast, and absolutely up and down the Mississippi River, we are having an extraordinary spring of storms that have resulted in the loss of hundreds of lives, the damage of hundreds of millions of dollars of property, declarations of disaster in a number of states, and more to come, I suspect, and very difficult decisions having to be made up and down the Mississippi River as to whether to intentionally punch through levees to relieve some of the water pressure to save larger communities, even if you have to sacrifice a smaller one. That happened up in Birds Point, Missouri earlier this week. The Army Corps of Engineers makes those decisions. This is a system of levees, by the way, that was put in place following the 1927 floods. They are designed to create artificial spillways off the Mississippi to relieve pressure from there. But nonetheless, as we watch the weather, and by the way, I must say I've never watched as much weather as I do as the Secretary of Homeland Security. I mean, I'm from Arizona. You get up in the morning, the weather report is it's going to be sunny today. So, but across the country, that ain't so. And it is a particularly intense period for us, and we express our sympathies to all who have lost loved ones and homes and businesses, and we are committed to making sure our communities recover as quickly as possible. Now, we have been actively engaged in efforts in Georgia. You were hit by that whole swath of tornadoes that hit. It seemed like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. We are putting the full force of the federal government behind that. The President and the First Lady were in Alabama. Almost immediately thereafter, I've been in Alabama and Mississippi. The Director of FEMA, Craig Fugate, has been in a number of states. Tomorrow morning, I will go to Ringgold, Georgia, which is one of the communities hit hard here in this state. And I'm doing that, and you do that. Seeing the devastation firsthand always gives you some ideas of additional things. Have we thought of this? Are we making sure we're doing that? Just to make sure we're really alert and have fingertip knowledge of what is happening on the ground, but also to show our support to communities as they recover. As of noon yesterday, 50,000 people have registered for FEMA assistance. We have already sent out more than $23 million in grants to individuals to help with temporary housing and home repairs. One of the things we're trying to do, by the way, and this is a lesson learned post-Katrina, is get people some money right away so they can repair their house so it doesn't sit empty when another storm comes and then they're really out of luck and their home is really destroyed. So we're really focused on get some money now, get some instant repairs done now, try to keep as many people in their homes as we possibly can, and then move people out of shelters rapidly into rental housing as we look at their long-term housing situations. We are also providing through the SBA low-cost loans for uninsured property losses and other programs. So we're asking people to register at FEMA.gov. That's the easiest way, or to call FEMA. We can't help you if you don't help us know about you. So help us help you by registering, and I think those registrations are really beginning to flow in. Interestingly enough, and kind of an indicator of the times, 13,000 people have registered via the web, or we actually have an app that you can use on a smartphone, m.fema.gov. You get on that, and on your phone you can actually sign up and find out and start working what assistance you're qualified for and get that process moving. And we have a vast array of operators that are helping people as they register, so that we want to make sure we don't get a backlog, that we're doing a quick turnaround. So that work is ongoing. You might be interested in knowing that in this state, as of May 2nd, we had issued disaster declarations to a number of counties. We are already doing the damage assessments attendant to that, and we'll probably be assisting or adding more counties to those declarations as the damage assessments are complete. The way the system works is FEMA is the backup to locals and states, right? So they're first, states second, we're third. And we really kick in when damages reach a certain level, so you have to do assessments. The exception is when it's so evident at the outset that there's going to be a declaration. We go ahead and go to the president and say, go ahead and issue this, the assessment will catch up. And we did that with several states on last Thursday, a week ago Thursday now. Let me turn to the third topic because I want to leave plenty of time for questions. By the way, as of yesterday, I want to make sure I mention this for the media who's here. There are 9 disaster recovery centers open in Georgia for anyone whose homes or businesses have been affected. So even if you don't go to FEMA.gov or call FEMA or have a smartphone, there are 9 disaster centers open. They're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week, 7, 7, and 7. So that's easy to remember. And we were going to keep those open until further notice. So that's important as well. Now, last subject I want to address is another area of our department, and that involves border security and immigration, a very non-controversial topic. You know, it's a topic I've been dealing with now for almost 20 years. I was the U.S. Attorney in Arizona, so I supervised the prosecution of at least 6,000 immigration felonies. And that doesn't include all the drug and drug-related cases that we did. And then I was the Attorney General of Arizona. During the period when illegal immigration across the Arizona border really began to crest. And then I was, of course, the governor for 2 terms, well, 1.5 terms, until I was asked to be the secretary. So I know this issue very, very well. And I know this issue enough to say that there has never been a larger, more sustained, and better effort at the southwest border of the United States than there is today. We have increased the size of the Border Patrol to more than almost 21,000 right now, more than double the size it was just a few years ago. We have doubled the number of personnel on the Border Enforcement Security Task Forces. We've increased the number of immigration and customs enforcement analysts who focus solely on cartel violence in Mexico. We have quintupled deployments of border liaison officers to work directly across the border with Mexican law enforcement. We're screening all southbound rail and now more and more southbound vehicle traffic, looking for transshipments of illegal guns and bulk cash that are fueling the cartel violence in Mexico. We have constructed 649 miles of the 652 miles of fence that Congress actually appropriated money for. And the remaining 3 miles, we hope to get done shortly, that it has been involved in some property litigation because it had to cross some private land, and so we've got to, and had to deal with that. What do we have to show for this? We have seized more currency, more drugs, more outbound arms in the past year than any year in our country's history. And the number of illegal immigrant apprehensions is at less than half right now of what it was at its peak, and it is going down dramatically. The reason that's a significant number is that apprehensions is one metric, only one, but it's one we have, to measure how many attempts are being made at illegal immigration, how many people are trying to get across our border illegally. But it is, like I said, less than half of what it was 5 years ago. It's down 36% just in the last 2 years. So every number that needs to go up is going up dramatically, and every number that's going down is going down dramatically. And those efforts are being sustained, and the president is committed to that, as am I, as a former border state governor. Now, in addition to that, we're also focused on enforcement in the interior of the country. That means we are looking at employers more. We're doing more audits of employers to see that they are complying with our nation's immigration laws. And if the audit reveals that it doesn't look like they are, then we elevate it to an actual criminal investigation. And we've done more of those the last 2 years than ever before. We hope by them to make sure that in the employer side of this, we focus on the employers, not just the workers. And that's important because a lot of this illegal immigration is the demand is employment related. we need to deal with that demand factor as well as what may be coming across our border. We've strengthened the efficiency and accuracy of E-Verify, which is a computer system to check legal presence in the United States. When I was governor, I required our state government to all of our agencies when they were hiring to use E-Verify. So I know the system, and I know the improvements we made in the system. We continue to make improvements in the system. We want to make it inexpensive and available for businesses across the country because we want people to use it as a way to make sure they're complying with our nation's immigration laws. And we're also working on the legal side of immigration, and this is an important part. It too often goes unnoticed, but for example, we're required to do background checks on a lot of individuals who are applying for certain types of visas, immigration benefits, and the like. And when I came in, there was a huge backlog of those, hundreds of thousands. That basically has been eliminated now. We have expedited citizenship for non-citizens serving our country in the military overseas. They're serving in the military. They ought to be able to become citizens of our country, and we're expediting that process. There's nothing more moving in a way. I've done a lot of naturalization ceremonies, and that's where you swear in people who are revoking the citizenship of their country of origin, and they are taking the oath to be U.S. citizens. And there is nothing more moving than in the first 2 rows or 3 rows, wherever you do it, to see men and women who are already in uniform service to our country who are actually taking that oath. They're already proving by their service their commitment to our country and its values. We are working to help provide and facilitate those who are qualified for other types of visas as well. But let me get to the rub. And the rub is this: we can do all the Southwest border enforcement in the world, and literally hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent at the Southwest border. But the current law does not meet our country's needs. And the current law, which is a federal law, has to be updated. It has to be updated and reformed on the enforcement side, on the visa side, and we have to deal forthrightly, firmly, and strongly with those illegally in the country because there are too many of them to deport, but there are other sanctions, other payments and penalties they can be made to pay in order to stay in the country. And that's, as you talk with people, they all agree that's what immigration reform will entail, but it will also entail the Congress getting down to the table and realizing that border enforcement in and of itself is not the sine qua non for immigration enforcement. These things go together. And our commitment to that is quite strong, and I think that's something that only the Congress can solve, but the administration is right there saying it's time for us to deal with this very serious national issue as a nation, not state by state by state. So that is an ongoing issue in Washington, D.C., but it's something I hope you recognize and know something about. So, in sum, I have just touched 3 of the major issues that we have been dealing with that have been occupying me the last weeks. I did not touch upon cybersecurity. I did not touch upon aviation and cargo security. I did not touch upon international information sharing, all topics of interest to some of you. But I think just these 3 things give you a sense of the breadth and depth of the issues ongoing in respect to Homeland Security in our nation today. What unites everybody in our department, and I think what unites our department with our partners around the country and indeed around the world, but it's our mission, and that is to do everything we can in a world that never will be risk-free, in a world of ever-evolving threats, but to do everything we can to keep our country safe. That unites us, that propels us, and that inspires us. Thank you all very much.
time for questions.
Yes. You know what the Department of Justice did on the Arizona law, which was to seek to enjoin major parts of it, and that injunction was upheld by the Court of Appeals. I don't want to comment on this state's particular law. I understand that something is before the governor right now. Those legal determinations will be made with the Department of Justice and in consultation with the Department of Justice. But I think these efforts at the state-by-state level, first of all, they're predicated on a falsity. And the falsity is that there has been nothing done and that the border somehow is out of control. And that is incorrect. And that's why I give you the litany of the actual facts, because it is difficult sometimes to pierce that miasma. But the plain fact of the matter is, and I speak as someone with experience and who's at the border all the time, is there's never been a stronger, more sustained effort there. We're not doing, we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to build at the border. We're going to continue to do smart enforcement in the interior of the country. That's our job. We're an enforcement agency. But I really get dismayed when I hear that, we got a lot of men and women working in very hard circumstances on that border. It is hot, hard, dangerous work. I mean, the District of Arizona just yesterday unsealed an indictment against individuals involved in the murder of one of our agents. So to say they're not doing anything, I just say, wait a minute, this is law enforcement. They've brought the crime rate down significantly over the last several years. They should be getting credit for that. And the other thing is that we need, and this is what the president has said and what I've been saying, state by state won't cut it. It's got to be a federal reform of the immigration laws if we are really going to deal with this issue. When you look at the way our system is set up, when you read the case law and you read the Constitution, you realize immigration is fundamentally a federal issue. And so we need to encourage all of our members of Congress, bipartisan, because it can't be one party or the other. It is time to get to the table and see if we can work this problem out. It's just as I described. It would be updating the enforcement provisions. For example, I mentioned that we have been trying to focus on employers, right, who create demand for a lot of illegal labor. But the laws on employers are very weak. I mean, they have really elaborate elements of proof and so forth. They make the cases really complicated. And quite frankly, the penalties and fines are not substantial. So they don't create a deterrent. So we need to update our enforcement laws to match what we need to do to deter the demand for illegal immigration. We need to update things like visas for high-tech workers, for agricultural workers. We need to quit going after or not dealing with young people who were basically brought here by their parents when they were infants. They've grown up here. They only know the United States. They're in college now or graduate school. They've done very well. And all of a sudden we run into them because for a number of ways that they could come into contact with us. We don't have a lot of options with these kids. And we think that there ought to be a way that we can figure out that they can stay. That's called the DREAM Act. Well, that's something that should have been passed in the lame duck, and it failed by 5 votes in the Senate, passed the House. That's not amnesty. That's just common sense in terms of our country and its values. So enforcement update, dealing with all the visa-related issues and the DREAM Act students, and then dealing with those who are in the country illegally so they can come out of the shadows and have some sort of legal presence. Yeah. First thing I would say is go to FEMA.gov, click over to where the grants information is and reach that, and there's phone numbers and some information there. We run virtually all of our grants through a group of people at FEMA, so it's all consolidated in one place.
Security grants?
Yeah, we do all the security, UASCs, state homeland security grants, port security grants, transportation security grants, all of those. But the unit is physically located at FEMA, so that they're all together in one place. Okay? But I think some of the arguments in Georgia reflect arguments that have been made in states across the country, and they also reflect the underlying frustration that this has not yet been dealt with at the national level, which is really where it should be dealt with, so that there is national consistency where immigration is concerned. Our number one issue is making sure that we are maintaining the security posture of the United States against an ever-evolving threat picture. So let's not lose sight of that. And we need to be funded to the degree that allows us to, and permits us to do that, as well as all of these other responsibilities that statute gives us. But in so doing, we certainly have an obligation to look for places where we can cut, where there can be efficiencies, where we may have redundancies, where we can streamline services. So those are all areas that we have been working on for the last 2 years. We have identified and in fact incorporated in our budget literally hundreds of millions of dollars of what we call efficiency savings, part of which is part of building a department, one department out of many. So all these agencies came, they all had their own contracting and their own acquisition and their own personnel and their own policies for all this kind of stuff, all was different. And as we are bringing these things together and knitting them into one DHS, that permits us, I think, to achieve savings as well. But the overall security posture of the United States always has to be one, unfortunately, but it's the reality of making sure we cover a lot of different bases simultaneously. I wouldn't value it in terms of money because I think that's hard to judge. What it would do is that it would allow us to focus more on those we need to focus on, those who are national security risks who are trying to cross into our country, those who are criminals who are trying to cross into our country, to name but two groups that we really need to focus on. And it would be very helpful from a security perspective if those priorities were clearly the ones that we had to focus on, because there were other ways for people to cross legally, properly, vetted, biometric cards through our land, our sea, or our airports of entry. Yes, sir. In some states, the insurance providers are actually in or kind of clicked in with the disaster recovery centers. I can't answer the question specifically with respect to the damage here in Georgia. It'll probably be one of the set of questions that I ask tomorrow when I go to Ringgold. We obviously don't control the private insurance industry, but we certainly can work together with them and ask them and so forth. And we really, as I went through Alabama and Mississippi last week, to me, it looks like beyond the loss of life, which has been significant, the housing situation and getting people out of shelters into decent rental housing if they can't go back into their homes or back into their own homes as quickly as possible is our goal. And we, of course, will work with the insurers and NGOs and anybody else who's involved in reaching that goal. There are a number of things that our country does with respect to the protection against nuclear, which can take many forms. The threat information that we have on Al-Qaeda has been primarily focused on things like the aviation industry. One of the reasons being, of course, that they used the aviation industry to great effect in 9/11. Now, they could not repeat 9/11. We've put in place too many things there. But they continue to, they continue to evolve, and we have to continue to evolve. This is not a static situation. And so the minute we sit back and say, we've got it, we're done, whatever, you have to view them as very tactical, and they will try to find a way around it. So we have to constantly evaluate intel, tactics, techniques, behaviors that could be tip-offs to possible plotting. And we constantly have to be sharing that information, sharing it with our neighbors around the globe, and sharing it within the federal family, and sharing it, as I've emphasized here today, to state and local law enforcement. Okay? Yes. In the far back there? Actually, very, very, very few people get a pat down, and it's only under very limited circumstances. They do, however, get, those who are patted down tend to get on YouTube fairly frequently. And look, I'm the first to say, no one wants to see a 6-year-old being patted down, right? Even if it's done according to procedure and protocol, and the TSA administrator, they've already been revising that aspect of things. Here's where we need to be. Where we need to be is enhancing our ability to find ways to speed people through airports who we assess are at low or no risk, frequent travelers, for example, who have some kind of a biometric card or something like that, so that we can confirm identity. And so that will enable us to focus on those that we need to, or for whom we either cannot assess risk or we assess are perhaps a higher risk. And then for that category, so we need to be able to better separate those groups, and we are working on that. And I think TSA will have some ability to make some announcements in that regard over the coming year, 2 years. We also need to have better technology that enables us to, by the time you get to the gate, by the way, there are about 7 things that have been done before you get to a gate. I mean, it's not as if that is the only thing. It kind of drives me crazy when I read things like, we ought to be doing more on intel. We're doing a lot, but there are a lot of things that happen before you get to the gate. But that's the last line of protection before you get on an airplane. And so the new machines are better because they pick up non-metallic powders and gels. And we know that Al-Qaeda and other groups have evolved in the bomb-making phase beyond bombs that require metallic things. So those we're going to continue to deploy. But we're going to continue to evolve the software that's in them so it gets better and better. We also are working and seeing if we can reduce the number of things that you have to take off. It's called divestiture, by the way. Hey, look, in this job, you can't make it up. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's called divestiture. It makes sense. What do you have to divest yourself of? Yeah, you can say I'm divesting. And they'll probably put you on a special watch list. But in any event, just kidding. I know I'm on the record, just kidding, that's a joke. I think, for example, shoes, laptops, things of that sort. We're making some real technological advances on. Liquids are another set of problems. Why? Because ascertaining what a liquid is and what it's comprised of, and being able to do it accurately in the kind of time you have with the kind of passenger throughput we have, that's a very difficult scientific problem. But some of these things, we believe, moving more to a risk-based system as opposed to treat everybody the same system, which is where we are going, right? That is the evolution that we are in at TSA. I think we'll be able to provide some relief to airline passengers in the next months and the next year or two. So that's what we're aiming for. Everything we have to do, we have to test. We have to pilot test. Pilot meaning initial, not pilot, fly the plane. But we need to pilot test, and we have scalability issues. We have the biggest aviation system in the world. It's very, very safe. It has remained very, very safe. We want to keep it that way. So that's our goal. Yeah. Yes.
Last question.
One last question. Yes, ma'am. We have not raised the National Terrorism Advisory. So that means we have no specific credible intelligence right now, today in Atlanta at 1:09 p.m. That would indicate that we do so. And that means from whatever group may be out there. But we are constantly, with our intelligence partners feeding into us, evaluating that posture. And we will continue to do so. We want the American citizens to live in a state of alert and not a state of alarm. And that means being prepared, it means being vigilant, it means if you see something, say something, and it means that we on this side of the podium continue to be leaning forward very aggressively in terms of the protection of the American people. Thank you very much.